Hi, everyone. Happy Friday. I don't know how we got here so quickly again, but here we are at the end of a week again. So welcome to another discovery session with Efficiency Canada and Friends. I'm Natalie Irwin, Director of Stakeholder Engagement here at Efficiency Canada. Before we get started today, a quick reminder to everyone that our guest speakers will present for approximately 20 minutes before we open the floor to questions. There are two ways to ask questions, as you know. One is to raise your hand and I can unmute you. You can ask your own question, or the popular way to ask a question is to type the question in the Q&A box and we will get to it during our Q&A period. We have a pretty hard stop at 12:45 p.m. Eastern time so that everyone can finish their lunch, breakfast, afternoon snack, dinner, or maybe midnight snack if you're joining us from Australia. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome our guest speakers, our friends here today. Olivier Cappon from Senior Manager Business Development and Government Relations at the Canadian Institute for Energy Training, or CIET as affectionately known, and Ed Rubenstein, Director of Environmental Compliance, Energy and Sustainability at the University Health Network. The two of them are going to give us an overview of the Certified Energy Manager, or also affectionately known as the CEM training program. Thanks for joining us today, gentlemen.
Thank you. So welcome everybody. Thanks again to Efficiency Canada for having us. This is the second time that I've gotten to present on one of the discovery sessions. So very happy to be doing this again, and delighted to have Ed Rubenstein alongside me, which I'll introduce more in depth as we go. But the first thing I just want to do is provide a couple of highlights of the CEM program as it exists now. And so essentially what it is that the Certified Energy Manager program, many of you actually attending probably either know somebody or maybe CEMs yourselves, but CIET started to deliver this training in 1996. And at this point, there's about 3,500 or so active CEMs. I think we've trained in total somewhere around 5,000. But there are about 3,500 active CEMs in Canada and about 16,000 worldwide. The AEE tells me that there are CEMs in 103 countries at the moment, according to them. Which is quite something, as that's half the nations on Earth, which is impressive. And so we, the CIET, have been leading the training, and the actual CEM designation is awarded by the Association of Energy Engineers. And what's interesting about that is that there's a process by which people have to continue to renew their CEM certification every 3 years, which also affords them the opportunity to continue to take some professional development courses as they ramp up to renewing that every 3 years. And my final point on this is that there are several programs, both specifically in Ontario and in British Columbia, but in other regions as well, that actually require participants that are either in energy management roles or that are in funded energy manager roles to become CEMs, generally within a period of a year, but it depends on the program. And it's been quite rewarding also to see the number of job postings that have come to the forefront where the CEM designation is either a requirement of the job or is essentially strongly suggested by the job. And I think that speaks volumes to how the market sees the CEM training. And so one of the things that we'll try to do in this discussion is come up with some answers for you as to how this came to be and why the CEM in particular has been so sought after and gained that market recognition. So in terms of the content of the course, it really, I would say, blends some technical elements with economic analysis and systems and regulatory aspects of energy management. You see here, I won't go over them all, but the key themes really revolve around energy accounting and economics, things like energy auditing and the instrumentation that goes along with it, and then looking at the various systems that are at play within buildings. And one of the things that's interesting is, of course, and I'll ask Ed about this in a few minutes, but as the CEM evolves, as energy management evolves, of course, the CEM has to evolve. And so therefore, there are things that are dropping down in focus, and then, of course, there are things that are coming up in focus. For instance, how to integrate renewable energy systems into buildings and things like that. The typical, so I mean, really the CEM program is open to anybody that meets the criteria, but there are certainly typical job titles that reflect the type of participants that are usually part of CEM programs. And I just highlighted some of them here. So a lot of energy engineers and a lot of energy managers, of course. Facility managers that are working in either the commercial space or the institutional or industrial sectors. We see that a lot. We also see a lot of people working for energy service companies, and certainly a lot of consultants, especially I think those that work on commercial and institutional projects and with institutional partners, especially government. Project engineers, of course, and more and more, a lot of people in roles that are more in sustainability, which is great because a lot of times people in sustainability have that overarching image and also understand that connection between energy management and energy reduction and the greater goals related to climate change. So that's been wonderful to see as well. And then I always like this picture. This picture essentially it's kind of like a business development person, whereby an organization, when they think of a business development person, they see dollar signs. So often, Ed, as I'm sure you would agree that often when somebody sees an energy manager, they see somebody that's going to have some brilliant ideas as to how to immediately come in the organization and reduce the energy spend of that organization. So I've always liked this picture. But often I was just brainstorming as to what are the things that people typically think they're going to get out of an energy manager, and five of which that occurred to us are somebody that's going to improve energy efficiency, somebody that's going to change energy consumption and energy consumption patterns, somebody that will be able to lead a shift towards other sources of energy, whether those are renewables or whether those are clean sources of energy, whatever the case may be. Those that can help an organization be more competitive by, as we said before, reducing costs, and those that can contribute to GHG reduction through energy conservation. So what I'd like to do now is bring Ed into the fold, and I'll just provide a quick introduction on Ed, who I've gotten to know over the past 4 years. And Ed is the Energy and Environmental Manager at the University Health Network. And he's been leading the hospital's many environmental programs since 1999 and has helped the UHN, the University Health Network, become a leader in greening healthcare. Both the UHN and Ed's leadership in the field of greening healthcare have been recognized with several awards from the OHA, from Natural Resources Canada, and also from the Canadian Council of Ministers for the Environment. And of course, I think it goes without saying, Ed, that I'm particularly happy that you were able to join us, because I know how busy a time this is for you, with the pandemic and all the things that you're involved
and
in.
I was going to say the pictures up there are pre-COVID facial hair pictures, so it's a bit of a flashback, but nice to see. So
that's true. There's a bit of a difference between your beard in this picture and your beard now.
Yeah, more gray too, sad to say, but so it goes.
We'll chalk it up to the pandemic.
That's right.
So Ed, I'll start you off with this question, and to the audience actually. Ed has had little to no preparation on these questions, so hopefully we can catch him in many moments of honesty. So Ed, to what do you attribute the popularity of the CEM program over the years?
Yeah, good question. So I think you pointed out in an earlier slide, Olivier, it's such a wide variety of topics, right? So, and my experience personally, when I took my CEM many years ago, and talking with many students I've had the privilege to teach over the years, is that for some people, if they're new to the field, they get a very quick introduction to everything they need to know about energy, and then from that they can decide, for their specific role or passion, which to delve a little bit deeper into. And similarly, I know many people take the course with a lot of experience, in energy already, but maybe not the broad experience. And maybe it doesn't also include, some of the financial accounting stuff, some of the newer technologies coming on, the alternative financing things we talk about. So really, I think the CEM does is provides a very high level overview of everything energy, but also ties it in together into a nice package, how you look at energy management as opposed to just looking at, LED lighting or motors or HVAC or things like that.
Is there, just tapping into that question, is there a section of the CEM that you find that people always want to know more about?
A good question. So there's a couple. I mean, HVAC is always very popular because there's a lot of opportunity in HVAC, and every HVAC system is different. So lots of good discussion there, and people have specific questions about maybe things they've encountered in the job or things that they're looking at. And that's always interesting. Plus, I get to talk about psychrometric charts and kind of demystify them for people, scare them with a word, and then say, hey, they're not so bad. But I think, it's for me, as someone who's still in the field, I'm also really excited about some of the up and coming things. So renewable energy, storage, decentralized energy resources, things where, what, there are sections on those, but there's also usually a lot of lively discussion amongst the participants because it really is an emerging field. So there's lots of wide variety of experiences and ideas out there, which is great for me as the instructor, but I think people really enjoy hearing what's going on in other parts of the country or, virtually other parts of the world where we've had participants from all over the globe for our CEMs.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's no question that the CEM and just training in general actually has been bolstered by the fact that the energy efficiency industry is a growing sector. There's no question about that. You just tapped on the fact that you are not only an instructor, but you're an energy practitioner yourself. So, in your eyes, how closely do you think that the CEM provides a reflection of what people will actually encounter in the real world as energy managers or as energy practitioners?
So I think it'll give you a very good overview, right? So if you take an example for HVAC, it'll give you an idea of everything you might or could potentially encounter in the real world. And then if nothing else, it gives you the tools to ask the right questions. So it's, what I always like to say is that, as a certified energy manager, you're never going to be a professional engineer, you're never going to be an HVAC technician, but you should have the foundational knowledge to go out and ask the right questions to speak with those people. And I think it sets people up very nicely to speak with the engineers, the architects, the finance, the communications people, everyone that's needed to make a successful energy management program. This will should give you a very good idea of what to expect out there in terms of technology, the issues and concerns. We focus a lot on the widgets, but we also touch a little bit upon some of the other factors that go into play into energy management. So I think it's a very strong foundation. And then again, as you translate that to your specific work setting or passion, then you can dive a little bit deeper to some of the specifics.
And I know, Ed, of course, one of the things that I didn't say, but we typically have anywhere between 2 and 4 instructors that divvy up the 5 days of training. But I know that you've also numerous times have delivered all 5 of the days at various points. Do you have a favorite section in the training, and if so, what is it and why?
Yeah, so I love all my children equally, so I love all the sections. And I have some unfavorite sections, which I won't talk about, just in case anyone sits in a course and I'm
That's
teaching
never a
that
good
section.
selling point. Yeah.
No, but there's some, it's just the sections I don't like, just because I'll say it, electricity gives me the willies, is electricity, is it a curve? Is it a particle? What is electricity, right? But that's a little bit too deep. We don't get into that in the CEM. So, but I'm okay with the section, I should say. But some of my favorites, I think I mentioned the HVAC is very good because there's some good discussion and because there's such good opportunity. And I also like when we get into the financial and the alternative finance. A lot of people groan and there's, some math involved in that, but it's so important to be able to speak the language of other people, right? So if you want to get your energy project funded, once you take the CEM and you understand the finance section, you have the tools to do the math, but you also will learn the language so you can go out and approach whoever controls the money, the CFO or controller or otherwise. So
yeah,
that's probably one of my favorite to teach, and lots of good stories as well, lots of good anecdotes along the way.
There's nothing better to push a project for than a sound financial analysis to
Absolutely.
to back up what you want to do. Okay, what sector do you think would benefit the most from having more CEMs? And the reason why I say that is I've noticed that we specifically have a lot of people from the commercial and institutional sectors, and as well as a lot of people that are either service providers or work for service providers, whether they be consultants or others. So yeah, can you speak a bit to what sectors you think would benefit most?
So to be honest, I'd have to say all of them. I mean, energy is used everywhere. And in the course, we get people from industrial, commercial, institutional, as you mentioned, service providers as well. So anywhere energy is a significant factor in providing whatever service that company does, which is every sector, I think, and where it's a major cost. And again, energy is, not hugely expensive compared to some other things, but it's also a considerable cost. So I think, a lot more, maybe along the lines of property management, where you're looking at a portfolio, right? There's some unique opportunities there. You're starting to see that. Municipalities, for sure. People like myself, where there's a portfolio of buildings. So I think that's one sector where, instead of just, we have a lot of people coming from a specific building maybe, but when you start looking at a portfolio of buildings and maybe some of the synergies, there's definitely an opportunity to have CEMs involved there and kind of get the big picture energy management and bring it to the organization.
What about, when you say building portfolios, we're speaking primarily about commercial buildings. Do you think, however, I know that there are a lot of opportunities within residential high-rise buildings, but is there any applicability to that industry?
Absolutely. So, I mean, I think if you look at the numbers, if we want to address climate change, we have to address buildings, and there's a lot of residential buildings. So there is definitely an involvement. I mean, the scale is different, right? So different between high rises and also, single family dwellings or smaller family dwellings, low rise buildings. But yeah, if you think about it, a large high rise will have, heating and cooling. It's going to have common spaces and things like that. And, you have, hundreds, maybe even more thousands of customers who, rely on that, but also impact the energy that's used by the building as they plug things in their own apartments or their own units as well. So I think so. I think it's, there's things that could be done building as a whole, but also working with the tenants. I know I've been approached by individuals who, wanted to do some energy work within their condo, and were looking for help to get it done. How should they approach their condo board to get the work done? Whereas, some of the more proactive or leading edge organizations will actually bring that to the tenants instead and say, hey, we have a great idea. It's going to improve your living space. It's going to save money for the condominium, and here's what we'd like to do.
Makes sense. As energy management continues to evolve, what are some of the topics that you foresee as being added to the CEM? You touched on some of them, but is there one in particular that stands out? I was thinking of artificial intelligence within buildings myself, but I'm curious to know what stands out for you.
Yeah, so I think we did touch on them. So obviously renewable energy is a big one. and storage and things like that. But you're probably right. It's the whole concept of artificial intelligence and smart buildings. I mean, it's already coming. And in my experience, there's, the difficult thing for energy managers to do is separate the hype from the actuality. So the CEM will set you up really well to, if someone comes to you and trying to sell a widget, you can, you will have the tools to say, is this actually a meaningful change or is this more hype than others? But the whole idea of artificial intelligence is coming. It's not just in energy, but I work in the hospital field, and artificial intelligence is here. It's also being greatly expanded. So for me as an energy manager, this is very exciting because my role now is to say, well, how can I make sure our buildings can support our core function, the artificial intelligence that's being used for taking care of patients, and it opens up a whole world of opportunities. And you know what? Again, the trick is separating the actuality of what can be done and what has value from what's just a pie in the sky thought right now. So
Absolutely. The population of Canada is 38 million. We know that this is an emerging sector. As I noted earlier, there's about 3,500 active CEMs in Canada. Of course, I won't ask you to prognosticate, the future of either this industry or growth in Canada. But given the numbers that we just talked about, and given how you've seen the CEM program evolve and grow over your years as a trainer, how many do you think Canada's economy and organizations can support in terms of energy managers? How many more do you think it can support? How do you foresee it growing in the next let's say
so
5
yes.
years?
So as long as I don't have to put numbers to it, I'll say I think it's huge potential for growth, and the number is lots. To give you an example, the University Health Network, we're about 7 million square feet. We're 9 major buildings, I think, depends how you count, and we have 6 full-time energy managers. But I think the more important thing is that energy management, in my experience, works best if you have a person or people dedicated just in energy management. So nothing wrong with a facility manager or a third-party service provider providing energy management services, but you really need someone inside the organization who understands the nuances, how things work, the buildings and things like that. And it doesn't have to be just one per building, but it can be, as I mentioned, for a portfolio of buildings. So I've taught to people who they have a chain store across Canada, and they may have 1 or 2 or 3 energy managers overseeing all those stores. But the point is that they understand the buildings and they know the buildings. And having said that, I mean, that's for dedicated energy managers who don't get pulled away for other things. But in terms of just the CEM certification, I think, anytime we work with one of our colleagues, maybe in facility management or construction or redevelopment, and they have a CEM as well, it makes it all the more easier for us to have the conversation about energy management, because the sectors are really closely linked. So regularly, I will offer to send non-energy managers within an organization to get some sort of energy training so that they understand, they have the fundamentals, and that really facilitates the conversations that my team wants to have and the projects that we'd like to do, because we now have a common language and understanding, and at least a base technological level.
Yeah, speaking a common language, it's definitely important.
So important.
Some of the things you just mentioned make me think that I'd like you to ask you, are you a proponent of roaming energy manager type programs?
Yeah, nothing against that, as long as the people are able to understand the buildings and the individuals within the buildings. That's fine. I realize that not every organization has UHN is big, right? So we can support a large number of energy managers, but small organizations may not on their own be able to do that. So by teaming up with other organizations and having a shared resource, absolutely. But I think the important is someone who has the ability to build the relationships, understand the building, and things like that. And again, not taking away from third-party service providers. We use them all the time within UHN, but the energy managers we have within make sure that the company is able to provide the best value for us. And I think both sides are appreciative of having that kind of relationship within the organization.
Makes sense. What do you think somebody should know prior to taking the CEM course and certainly challenging the exam?
Yeah, so Good question. So, I mean, it is intense. There's a lot of information, but most people have no problem doing that. But I think the one thing to keep in mind is that there's math. Right? You can't get away from it. We're dealing with physics and stuff like that. It's not difficult math. But, in my experience, some people who maybe have not, we all use computers and stuff like now. We're going to do some base calculations to CEM, and maybe some people who are a little bit more removed from the school process, they have to get back into the mind headspace of reading word problems, writing equations, rearranging equations, and things like that. So fortunately, there's a lot of opportunity, lots of practice problems and Q&A sessions with the instructors to help people who are maybe having a bit of a challenge getting back into that mode. But that's the one thing. Otherwise, it's just people. Most of the feedback I get is people just love the broad range of energy information. And they just realize they have to write the exam, but they get maybe too much worried about the math part. But as long as you're conscious of it and can get yourself comfortable with it before the exam, again, my experience is most people have no problem with it.
I guess it's appropriate. Then often I hear the CEM be referred to as the MBA of the energy sector, and if you want
Nice.
to do an MBA, you have to do GMAT,
You got it.
which
That's
means you have
right.
to do math. So I
Yeah.
suppose it's only fair that that'd be the case. Final question for you, Ed. Are there any ideas or themes that you think would be useful to participants to keep in mind throughout as they progress throughout the
Yeah.
CEM course?
Good question. So I think I've kind of touched on this in some of my previous answers, but the CEM, we focus a lot on stuff, widgets, equipment, and things like that. But energy management is, for an energy manager, it's almost as equally as important that you have to deal with people, right? So it's building relationships. I have a lot of people saying, I've got this great project. Look, they'll show me the business case, they show me the technology, and they can't get it approved, right? Or they try to implement something and it's not supported by facilities, right? So I think people need to remember that energy is there for a purpose. It's there to serve people within the buildings and equipment, right? To make things, make people happy and comfortable, but also everyone uses energy, everyone's affected by energy. So when you're thinking energy management, you need to have relationships with everyone, right? And that can be from your, depending on your organization, from your finance people to your facilities people, to your housekeeping, to, in my case, doctors and nurses and very many people. A lot of what I do and what my team does is build relationships to make sure that we're able to, have that open communication and, make sure people are happy and safe and do the projects that we would like to do.
Thanks, Ed. And Natalie, I
Great.
hope you're impressed. We're right at 30 minutes.
Hey, we are efficient.
That was awesome. That was really insightful. I know I was getting questions kind of from everyone. Internally, a few people. We have Slack, and so I was getting questions on Slack as well for you guys.
Okay.
So, so not all the questions are going to be in the Q&A boxes, but if just a reminder to people, if you do have a question, the Q&A box is there. You can also raise your hand, and I can unmute you, and you can ask a question yourself. The only rule that we have is the same one for our presenters, and of course, no sales pitches, please, which includes any statements disguised as questions. We'll get to those. So first question is actually from Kelsey. It's just two questions. One's mostly for Ed, and the other one's for Olivier. So I'm going to go, Olivier, for you first. Have any positives come out of having training shift to online due to the pandemic?
Yeah, I'd say the largest positive is that now training doesn't have any particular borders. So although of course, I would be remiss if we didn't say that there are certain things that we lack, like for instance, a certain amount of face-to-face networking when you don't do things in person. However, we regularly see in the last 4 or 5 CEMs that we've done that have been virtual, we've seen that we have people regularly from at least 7 or 8 provinces. And sometimes the territories as well. And so to have such a geographic representation means that we have people from all sorts of backgrounds representing all sorts of industries and clients who are of course then able to bring their various perspectives in. And a lot of the time, I mean, we end up facilitating some connections that wouldn't otherwise be done, because normally the CEM, for instance, in Toronto would be in Toronto, the CEM in Halifax would be in Halifax and Vancouver and so on, and these groups would not mingle. So that is definitely a strong benefit, and I think that also connects to the energy efficiency industry, whereby I think if you accrue that knowledge and you are willing to chase different opportunities in different regions, there's no reason why people can't work in different sectors, because a lot of this stuff is transferable, which is the very reason why a program like the CEM, I think it was 103 countries that the AE tells me that it operates in. So it's very transferable from one region to another. So it's great to see regional barriers broken down by the virtual element.
Yeah, I can attest to that. As I'm originally from Halifax and in Nova Scotia, everyone, it's a small network there, so everyone kind of knows everyone. Or I always say, if I don't know you, I definitely know someone that knows you. So it's nice to have the extension across Canada for sure. So that's a great point. So Ed, I'm going to throw over a question to you now. Has the pandemic changed your approach for a post-pandemic situation?
Has the pandemic changed my approach? So I'm not 100% sure I understand the question, but I'll try to answer it anyway. Again, I think I mentioned this in my last question that was given to me by Olivier, but the approach is that energy is to serve people, right? So one thing we've had to do in the hospitals is increase our ventilation rates. We used to ramp them up, ramp them down, but with the COVID, we've made sure that we've used a lot more 100% fresh air where possible. And, we're starting to think ahead and design for that. But having said that, I mean, again, that's always been our focus is to provide, a safe and healthy working environment for our staff and patients. That approach hasn't changed at all. What maybe it has done is, things as enthalpy recovery or heat recovery are much more important now, especially if we're going to be using much more outdoor air. As are, I mean, we've always been big. I have 2 energy managers focused on BAS. So, the importance of making sure our BAS is operational, that things are working as they're supposed to, including sensors and things like that. We now have, let's say, more support for that because people can now directly see the impact on health if things don't work properly, if a fan goes down or filters, right? So yeah, I think that's the difference. It's just really, slight shift, but energy or ventilation is much more in focus now. So many more opportunities for fine tuning your ventilation system, and lots of new innovations coming in this way as well. So.
And what's interesting, Ed, is of course you work in a sector that has seen the opposite type of spike in occupancy than
yeah,
you
it's definitely
building.
interesting, and we have all kinds of hospitals. we have acute care hospitals. Good news for those in Ontario, they're starting to wind down some of our COVID units, which means there's less sick people in hospitals. But absolutely, and my team has been instrumental in supporting ventilation, even because we have some of the technical know-how, looking at making sure there's enough oxygen for increased acute care patients and things like that. So, and it goes back to that relationship. Oxygen supply has nothing to do with energy. It's bulk storage, yet it's a way of building relationships and supporting our core mission, taking care of patients. So then later on, when you say, hey, we want to do energy stuff, they say, you're the guys who helped us with the oxygen. Great, come on in. Let's talk.
That's a great point, Ed. Actually, a question here from Sarah is, she's actually wondering, are there many females that are CEMs in Canada, we'll say?
So I can just say I'll let Olivier handle the bulk of that. So I mean, one of our co-instructors, Emily, fantastic. She's a CEM and she's one of the smartest engineers that I know. But I have to say they seem to be less in terms of registration. There's a growing amount. And they come from a wide variety. Some of them on the facility side, some of them are energy managers, all kinds. But they're definitely female CEMs, and anecdotally, I'd say there are more now than actually, probably not even anecdotally, but there are more now than there were 5, 6, 7 years ago.
And I'll just add to that, Natalie, that so actually I had talked about one of our instructors, Emily Thorncorte, one of our CM instructors, who's also actually spearheaded an initiative that specifically focuses on women in energy and what that looks like. I think the group is called Step Up. I know that we're a sponsor as well. CIET is a sponsor, so they're doing some good work to pull more women into the field. In terms of the CEM, I was curious as soon as we got the question. So, for instance, anecdotally again, in the last CEM training, out of 44 participants, which is the maximum that we allow in the course, there were 9 women. So that kind of gives an idea.
That's good. And I know at Efficiency Canada, we're launching a career hub. So it's in the not too distant future this year. And that's something that we're going to be tracking as well as female participation, not just in the CEM course, but across all energy efficiency courses. So that's something we're working on.
Can I just add one thing, speaking about Emily again? If I'm not mistaken, I think last year the AEE recognized her as Energy Manager of the Year,
That's
right? So
yeah.
again, she's pretty awesome.
Yeah, so just a reminder to people, the organization that she and a few others have created is called Step Up. So fantastic group there. I'm going to get to another question. Actually, this is a great question from Ismail, and I think it's a good question. I think some people might be afraid to ask it, but I think I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but I'd love to hear from you, Olivier. Is why was the cost of the 5-day program not reduced as it's now online?
Yeah, that is a good question. It's a perfectly fair question. There are, so as I talked about before, CIET does deliver the training, but it is an accredited program from the Association of Energy Engineers. So of course, because of that relationship, there are royalty fees involved and so on and so forth. So those haven't changed. So therefore, the price structure of the course hasn't changed. Also, one of the things that's been very interesting about the pandemic is it's forced us to develop all sorts of tools that we didn't necessarily have before. And one of the things that we've invested in is actually to create a supplemental guide for energy managers that they can both use to prepare the exam, but also use going forward in their job. So it's yes, it's got a large manual, but I think it's a very useful manual as well. And we've also integrated some things that we never had in the course before. For instance, some peer exercises on day 4 and day 5 that really come to enhance it. So in essence, because of the investments that we've made in the course and also the relationship with the AE, which remains unchanged, we've just essentially kept things as they are.
Yeah, thanks so much. I thought that was the case, but I thought I better hear it from the horse's mouth, so to speak. A great question here. It's actually a question I'm sure a lot of people that are new to energy efficiency or thinking of joining have on their mind is there's a massive demand for deep energy retrofits in the residential sector. Also, thanks to the announcement, I think it was just yesterday, on the $5,000 per home from the federal government. So how could a CEM program help achieve this? You might want to talk about the CEA versus CEM.
Yeah, I'd actually say that, so you've probably noticed that when we talked about the different industries or where people typically come from when they take the CEM, we mentioned, of course, commercial and institutional service providers, sometimes even industrial, but we did not mention residential, because aside from high rise, and that's why I was curious what Ed would say on high rise, but as it pertains to homes and low rise or MERB type buildings, the CEM is really probably not the destination that they want to hit. It's more to become an NRCan energy advisor, for which, again, we don't want to plug anything, but I will throw in the fact that we do provide 2 courses whose purpose is to prepare people to write those exams. So maybe, Natalie, what I'll do is I'll send you a bit of information on that, as well as there's a little infographic that we have that kind of shows a path forward for people that are interested in becoming energy advisors. But I think really the better course for them and the better route of action is to become a residential energy advisor. So I'll send that to you, and then you can share that as appropriate.
If I could just add something as well, I mean, so the government announced it, but there's also the rollout of the program, and there's I'm assuming there's going to be people assisting with the rollout of the program. And I think if they have the CEM knowledge, they can really help, ascertain, who should be doing the audits, the types of, meaningful retrofits that might happen in houses and things like that, and to help. Because I mean, like anything else, the concern is, I get these people all the time knocking on my door trying to sell me some energy thing, not knowing who I am, and I'm like, yeah, I know enough about this to know that you're not really selling me something meaningful, right? So this same thing in helping set up the programs to really help consumers, who maybe don't have the technical knowledge, make sure that they're getting good value for what they're doing.
Yeah, thank you. And I also just posted, it includes the CIE training on the Certified Energy Advisor as well as Certified Energy Manager in there. The link, just so everyone knows, Efficiency Canada at the start of the pandemic, speaking of the pandemic leading to good things as well, is that we just said what online courses are out there for people that might be just sitting at home wondering what they could do. And so we just compiled the list. And it's on our website there, including a special shout out for the Certified Energy Advisor training and links to other videos as well. So I'd encourage you to check that out. A question here, this is a great question from Eva, is when she first looked into the CEM trainings course / exam on the CIET website, she seems to recall it requiring that you already need to be working with an organization in that type of role. But she wasn't able to get the job that came across at her work because she didn't have the CEM requirement. So it seems like a chicken and egg type scenario. And so she's actually wondering, do you already have to be working in the field to take the course and become a CEM?
No, I mean, I think there's certain qualifications you need, and correct me if I'm wrong, Olivier, to get the CEM. But if you don't meet all of them, and that could be not having the work experience, you become an EMIT, an energy manager in training, right? Which means you've done all the work, you've taken the course, you've passed the exam, you just may need to have one or two qualifications that you're not quite there yet. But you have the exact same knowledge base as a CEM would.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, to what Ed said by saying that. So as soon as an EMIT, so if they are missing something, let's say they're missing a year of experience, or they are just finishing an engineering degree, or whatever the case may be, so they'll become an EMIT as opposed to a CM, and then once they fulfill that criteria, there's a very short application form that they ask essentially to convert the EMIT to a CEM, and then they essentially will end up becoming a full-fledged CEM without needing to, of course, retake the course or the exam. As much as they'd like to see it twice, they don't have to take the course once they fast.
Perfect. Thanks for that. I just noticed the time. It was just deep in discussion, so I'm gonna end it there. However, there's a lot of discussions and questions specific to the course, like somebody wants an asynchronous course versus just all in a row. Someone's interested in becoming an instructor. For those types of questions, please, Olivier's email's on the screen there, and if you can't jot it down fast enough, feel free to email either myself or the info@efficiencycanada.org, and we can put you in touch with the team at CIET directly to ask those questions. So thank you again to Ed and Olivier for joining today and for the fantastic, insightful conversation. I know I learned a lot, and I'm sure everyone else did too, and I'm sure you'll just get inundated with people that are ramped up and ready to get their CEM. Ed, you did a fantastic job selling it.
No sales here. And I'm going to put a pitch in. Go to Toronto General Hospital if you have a heart attack. But sorry, I shouldn't have done that.
Just slip that in.
That was a joke.
But we did get the insights about what did you say, the COVID numbers going down in the hospitals, because you had the.
Yep.
So that's good insight. You heard it here first. So it'll come on Global News or CBC or something soon after this.
Yes, it will be. It will be. Stay safe. Keep space. Get vaccinated. Actually, that's my sales pitch. Get vaccinated, please. So.
There you go. There you go. So if you are interested in presenting at any of these discovery sessions, our presenter is each week are other charity or not-for-profit organizations, along with our allies. And if you're curious about joining Efficiency Canada as an ally, you can find the information on our website, or feel free again to reach out to myself directly for details, and I'm happy to have a conversation with you. Thank you again to Ed and Olivier, and I hope you both join us next week when we actually have our friends from the Canadian Infrastructure Bank who are going to join me. Yeah. to give us all an overview of their new commercial retrofit initiative and how it will help accelerate energy retrofits and zero carbon reductions in Canada. So another really insightful one. I'm looking forward, especially to the Q&A session on that one for sure. So thank you, everyone. Take care, enjoy the weekend, and I'll see you next Friday. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.